Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajikacharya Shtotar Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Abhay Charanar Vinda Bhakti Vedanta Swami Shri Prabhupada Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Grantraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Jai Gaur Premanande Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So this is text 17 and 18. We'll recite the 18th verse. Durbhagamscha janan viksha. So it's on the 5th line. Durbhagamscha janan viksha Munir divyena chakshusha Sarvavarnashramanam yad Dadhyau hitam amoghadrek Durbhagamscha janan viksha Munir divyena chakshusha Sarvavarnashramanam yad Dadhyau hitam amoghadrek Durbhagamscha janan viksha Munir divyena chakshusha Sarvavarnashramanam yad Dadhyau hitam amoghadrek. Yes, we would like to recite. Hitam amoghadrek. Durbhagancha, also the unlucky. Janan, people in general. Viksha, by seeing. Chakshush, Munihi, the Muni. Divyena, by transcendental. Chakshusha, vision. Sarva, all. varnashramanam, of all the statuses and orders of life. Yet what? Dadhyau, contemplated. Hitam, welfare. Amoghadrik, one who is fully equipped in knowledge. So the verses 17 and 18 are combined. So we'll read the combined translation purport. The great sage, who was fully equipped in knowledge, could see through his transcendental vision the deterioration of everything material due to the influence of the age. He could also see that the faithless people in general would be reduced in duration of life and would be impatient due to lack of goodness. Thus he contemplated for the welfare of men in all status and orders of life. The unmanifested forces of time are so powerful that they reduce all matter to oblivion in due course. In Kali Yuga, the last millennium of a round of 4 millenniums, the power of all material objects deteriorates by the influence of time. In this age, the duration of the material body of the people in general is much reduced, and so is the memory. The action of matter has also not so much incentive. The land does not produce food grains in the same proportions as it did in other ages. The cow does not give as much milk as it used to give formerly. The production of vegetables and fruits is less than before. As such, all living beings, both men and animals, do not have sumptuous, nourishing food. Due to want of so many necessities of life, naturally the duration of life is reduced, the memory is short, intelligence is meager, mutual dealings are full of hypocrisy, and so on. The great sage Vyasadeva could see this by his transcendental vision. As an astrologer can see the future fate of a man, or an astronomer can foretell the solar and lunar eclipses, those liberated souls who can see through the scriptures can foretell the future of all mankind. They can see this due to the sharp vision of spiritual attainment. And all such transcendentalists who are naturally devotees of the Lord are always eager to render welfare service to the people in general. They are the real friends of the people in general, not the so-called public leaders who are unable to see what is going to happen 5 minutes ahead. In this age, the people in general, as well as their so-called leaders, are all unlucky fellows, faithless in spiritual knowledge and influenced by the age of Kali. They are all disturbed by various diseases. For example, in the present age, there are so many TB patients in TB hospitals. Formerly, this was not so because the time was not so unfavorable. The unfortunate men of this age are always reluctant to give a reception to the transcendentalists who are representatives of Vyasadeva, and selfless workers always busy in planning something which may help everyone in all statuses and orders of life. The greatest philanthropists are those transcendentalists who represent the mission of Vyasa, Narada, Madhava, Caitanya, Rupa and Saraswati. They are all one and the same. The personalities may be different, but the aim of the mission is one and the same, namely to deliver the fallen souls back home, back to Godhead. Om Jnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shrivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So I'm grateful to be here with all of you today morning, and we are discussing in this particular section the conceptual origin of the Srimad Bhagavatam. So the Bhagavatam itself has multiple origination points. So, if you consider the Srimad Bhagavatam, when I look down, is my audio still there or it's going off? It's still there, okay, good. So we can say the Bhagavatam at the outermost level, it is a discussion between Suta Goswami and the sages of Naimisharanya. And we are in the middle of this discussion. So this is right from the first canto, 1.1, till the end of the 12th canto. So we could say this is the contextual origin of the Srimad Bhagavatam. In what context? So the sages are discussing with the Suta Goswami. Suta Goswami is speaking. Now the second that is described is the conceptual origin. So contextual means in what context was this spoken? So conceptual is how did this concept of the Bhagavatam come out? And that is described in 1.4 to 6. This is the discussion between Narad Muni and Vyasadeva. And then within that we will have the historical context of the Bhagavatam. The historical will actually start from 1.7 and will go till 12.4. So this is basically the conversation between Shukadeva Goswami and Parikshit Maharaj. So the Bhagavatam is like a set of loops. And now, if you go further, sometimes there are further conversations that go on. So there's one point where there are actually 8 loops of conversation. And the Bhagavatam keeps moving forward. This verse is said by Yudhishthira, this verse is said by Hiranyakashipu, this verse is by Sukha Goswami, this verse is by Shuta Goswami. Or sometimes keeping track of where the Bhagavatam is can be very difficult. But the point of the Bhagavatam is one. That is to raise human consciousness. So here, when we are, now each context has a particular, or each frame in which the Bhagavatam is spoken, that is, has a particular purpose. So if you consider the frame and the purpose, the contextual frame is concern about Kali. The sages have assembled because they are concerned about the advent of the age of Kali, and they are thinking how to deal with it. If we consider the conceptual frame, that is, concern about Kali among the sages. The conceptual origin comes from Vyasadev's dissatisfaction. This is what we will be focusing on today in our discussion. That the concept of the Bhagavatam, this clear, consistent focus on the Supreme Lord, that arises because Vyasadeva is dissatisfied. We will discuss that. And then the historical origin of the Bhagavatam occurs because of Parikshit Maharaj being cursed to die, and his eagerness to prepare. He wants to prepare for his death. And how does he prepare? He consults the sages and they say, Vishnu Gatha, that hear the glories of Lord Vishnu. And then he becomes absorbed in hearing. So each of these is related, at the same time it's specific. It's like a speaker may give a Bhagavatam class here, so another speaker may give a class another place, another speaker may give another place. Now there could be a specific cause for the class being given on a particular topic, but it's a Bhagavatam class ultimately. So there will be some aspect of the class that is specific, which is addressing the audience. But there will also be the core of the class that will be universal. So I earlier started by saying that in the Bhagavatam, there are multiple threads or loops of conversation. The idea is that it's not to overwhelm or confuse the reader. It is, in one sense, these multiple frames. They highlight the timelessness of the message. That, okay, across different contexts, across different occasions, in different ages, people have sought and found shelter in the Bhagavatam. The timelessness of the message. So, if we consider the timeline, if the same message is spoken, say, 10,000 years ago, the same message is spoken maybe 50,000 years ago, the same message is spoken 5,000 years ago, same message is spoken 500 years ago, same message is spoken 50 years ago, same message is spoken 5 years ago, same message is spoken now. It's essentially the same message, then what it conveys is the timelessness of the message. So, now of course the Bhagavatam is speaking from 5,000 years before to further ages before that. But the point is, how when different people in entirely different times, they speak and hear the Bhagavatam and they find shelter in it. That illustrates the glory of the Bhagavatam. Anarthopashamam sakshat bhakti yoga madhokshaje lokasya ajananto vidvams chakre satvata samhitam. Satvata samhita. This pure scripture was composed by Vyasadeva because he was concerned about how people would be able to overcome the impurities, the misgivings in their own hearts. Anartha upashamamam. To remove the impurities from their hearts. That in one sense is a timeless concern. We may have different concerns at different times. Now maybe the concern is how to build the economy, how to deal with the consequences of technology. Now with AI coming up, ChatGPT, there is fear that a lot of people will lose their jobs. So the specific problems may be different at different times. But underlying them all is one problem. The problem of human selfishness. Technology is not the problem. Selfishness is the problem. So how do we remove that selfishness? How do we raise human consciousness? That is what is broadly the focus of the Bhagavatam. Now, there are the 4 yugas. Which are the 4 yugas? Anyone know? Satyuga, it is called Kruta Yuga. Then Treta Yuga. Then Dwapar Yuga. Kali Yuga. So, these 4 names actually come from, in the traditional dice game, these are 4 throws of a dice. So when the dice is thrown, it can be thrown in 4 different ways. Like sometimes you throw a dice, the 6 comes, sometimes 5 comes, sometimes 4 comes. So these are considered to be the 4 throws of a dice. And when this dice is thrown in 4 different, it falls in 4 different ways. Then these are the 4 names for the 4 throws of a dice. The idea is that at one level, like a dice game seems random. You throw and then anything might come up. So like that, the soul may find itself in any of the ages. Of course, it's not random, it's under divine plan, but it can seem random. Now, depending on what the score of the dice is, the game will proceed accordingly. So, the idea is that each age will have its particular circumstances. And we need to be able to function within those circumstances. There is always this question about destiny and free will. So what is destined and what is free will? So if we consider a game, like a game of dice or a game of cards, then the hand we get, that is destined. We can't change that. But how we play it is not distinct. We may have a poor hand, but if we play carefully, if we play expertly, we can still make a good deal out of it. We may have a great hand, but if we are reckless, if we are negligent, then we may not do well even with a great hand. So there is always destiny and free will. That dynamic is always there. So, for example, if we consider our own body, beyond a particular age, our height is fixed. So our height is destiny. But our weight is free will. Isn't it? So we can't change our height much, but we can change our weight. Similarly, now this Kali Yuga being there, what does it mean? The overall culture is going to go down. But what the Bhagavatam says is, the human consciousness can go up. The culture going on down is destined. But individual consciousness does not have to go down. It's like these 4 yugas are like seasons. So again, the dynamic of destiny and free will. That by destiny, in general, as is described in this verse, durbhagam, that people are going to be misled, people are going to be unfortunate. One of the favorite pastimes of people in this age is to find fault with politicians. Oh, this politician is like that politician is like that, everybody is terrible. Well, yes and no. Politicians are not a separate perverse species. That if we may criticize the politicians for their corruption, nepotism, power hungriness and all those things. But who knows? If we got that level of power, can we guarantee that we won't abuse that power? If we were subjected to the kind of pressures that they're subjected to. See, the Bhagavatam is, in economic circles, there is this concept of equal opportunity employer. That means there's no gender discrimination, there's no race discrimination, there's no age discrimination. We employ everyone. So similarly, you can say the Bhagavatam is an equal opportunity offender. What does it mean? Equal opportunity offender. That means the Bhagavatam doesn't single out any particular demographic to say that this is bad. Sometimes some statements may come out which may seem racist, which may seem sexist. But the Bhagavatam begins right with the presumption that everybody in human society is deficient. And they're especially deficient in Kali Yuga. In fact, if you look at the overall Bhagavatam, the class that gets the maximum bad press in the Bhagavatam is the Brahmanas. There are so many pastimes in the Bhagavatam that the Brahmanas are considered the topmost in Vedic culture. But the Brahmanas are shown in negative light. Can if you think of pastimes? Okay. Ajamil. Then anyone else? Shringi, yes, in this particular canto itself. Shringi, then Durvasa, yes. Anyone else? 10th canto? Sudama is shown in bad light? In bad light. Ashwathama, okay, Ashwathama is a Brahmana. He's all for all practical purposes Kshatriya. He's brutal, but in the 10th canto, a famous pastime. Yes, the Yajnik Brahmanas. The Brahmanas who are performing sacrifices. They are so busy performing sacrifices that they neglect Krishna when he comes there. So the Bhagavatam shows the limitations of all of humanity. And its purpose is not to castigate them. its purpose is to highlight this inevitable decline. The the culture is going to decline. And when the culture is going to decline, that means that nobody, see, one of the defining assumptions of the Bhagavatam, when it says equally opportunity of offended, the culture is going to decline, that no one is above being corruptible. Everybody, even the most elevated person, can become corrupted. And that's why everyone has to be cautious. Everyone has to protect themselves. So, no one is above being corruptible. It's like, another example, if you want to illustrate this point is, like if you consider destiny and free will, then we have, if it's a rainy season, now in India there is a rainy season, here I think rain comes anytime, so there's no such thing as a rainy season specifically. But the idea is that rains are unavoidable. And you might be a millionaire, you might be a king, you might be an industrialist. If you come out, you are going to get wet. The rains don't care whether you are a millionaire or a pauper, isn't it? But that does not mean that everybody has to get wet. If you use an umbrella, if you use a raincoat, if you use an umbrella, then you can be protected. But you need an umbrella. So avoiding rains is not an option for us, in the sense that stopping rains is not an option for us. But not getting wet is an option for us. That is provided we have the umbrella. So similarly, the Bhagavatam says that in this age, impurities are going to increase. We can't avoid those. But we can protect ourselves from those impurities. And that is by taking shelter of the Lord. Specifically, by taking shelter of absorbing our consciousness in the Lord through hearing and chanting His glories. So the umbrella, the Bhagavatam says, is remembrance of the Lord. That remembrance of the Lord can come by speaking, it can come by hearing. But to the extent we remember the Lord in a mood of service, to that extent we can be sheltered. Not only can we be sheltered, but actually, in one sense, in this age, raising our consciousness is made easier. So on one side, we have the decline of culture, but on the other side, there is the opportunity for elevation of consciousness. So the decline of culture, it's almost formidable. How people can lose a sense of moral compass, a sense of responsibility. It's often alarming to see that. When there's a formidable decline of culture, there is an accessible opportunity for consciousness raising. Opportunity for our consciousness elevation. And that is the fortune of this. Kalau tad Hari Kirtanad. By hearing the glories of Lord Hari. That is what is being described here. Now, specifically in this verse that we are discussing, this is the broader context. So we are right now in the conceptual origin of the Bhagavatam. In the conceptual origin of the Bhagavatam, it is described how Vyasadeva is dissatisfied. So Vyasadeva is a sage, and in one sense, he has created the ocean of Vedic literature. Not exactly created, he has manifested. He has put them down in written form. So he sometimes said as the author, but technically it's not so much as the author as a compiler. They were already there, he put them in written form. So he is the So Vyasa is the manifester. Manifester more in a written textual format, written format. There has been always, there has been a timeless oral tradition. Oral tradition means spiritual knowledge is passed down by the speaking of teachers to students. And this has been going on since time immemorial. Now, what? The Bhagavatam says that at a particular time, the written tradition started. So, now Vyasadeva was the person who began this written tradition. And it has been going on since then. So, he has done phenomenal work. So, he was also a part of the oral tradition. He has also heard. But then he moved on to inaugurate the written tradition. Now, when he started the written tradition, at that time, he did a prodigious amount of work. And normally speaking, it is natural that when we do something substantial, we expect some satisfaction. No, if we are going to say, even from an ordinary perspective, if we build a house and then we move into the house, we feel a sense of accomplishment, sense of fulfillment. We say study, we get a degree. Whenever there is an achievement, especially if the achievement is significant, we expect fulfillment. In one sense, achievement is external, fulfillment is internal. Whenever there's an achievement, we expect some corresponding fulfillment. Now in Sanskrit, the words used are nishreyas and the other way around. Achievement is often used by the word abhyuday. And fulfillment is nishreyas. Now these words have different meanings in this context. I am using in a particular context. Words are often multivalent. Multivalent means the same word can have multiple meanings. So for example, consider the word run. Now the run has run amok in the English language. Run has 640 meanings. It holds the English language record for maximum meanings. I am going for a run. I am running in the morning because my washing machine has stopped running. I am running away from this country because this person is running for president of this country. So each of these is a different meaning of the word running. So like that, there are several hundred meanings of the word running. Now in English, there's this one word run which has more than 500 meanings. In Sanskrit, there are more than 500 words which have more than 500 meanings. So now when a word has multiple meanings, then we depend on the context to understand the meaning. Then it is for the reader to use their intelligence to understand the meaning. So anyway, the point is, Vyasadeva expected achievement to lead to fulfillment. See, that itself is a significant level of consciousness. See, some people think that simply indulgence will lead to pleasure. If I just go to a party and I eat a lot, drink a lot, dance a lot, I'll have some pleasure. Now, in that, basically in indulgence, what we are doing is, we are simply taking. Okay, I go there, I grab this, I enjoy that, and I'll be happy. That is a very relatively low level of consciousness. To think that simply by grabbing and possessing and consuming, I'll get pleasure. Oh, if I can just watch TV without any interruption, that will be like the dream day of my life. Really? That's your dream day? Are your dreams so low? There's nothing higher for you? But some people think indulgence itself will give me pleasure. But there are people who understand that simply getting does not give pleasure. I have to give. It's only when we work hard, when we do something tangible, then there will be some pleasure. So achievement involves, indulgence is simply taking. But achievement generally involves some amount of working, some amount of giving. So Vyasadeva has given himself to the tireless labor of putting down all the Vedic literature together. And although he has done that, still he is not satisfied. And why is that? Because for fulfillment, two things are both required. The mode of our endeavor and the object of our endeavor. How we work and for what we work. Most people think, or many people think, that we can avoid both and still we can get happiness. Like somebody wants to be an author. So what they do is they hire a ghostwriter. And they pay the ghostwriter, and the ghostwriter, have you heard the word ghostwriter? Okay. It's a ghost who comes and writes a book for you. No, not like that. But the idea is that person who wrote the book, when people have some ghost writer, that means just like a ghost can't be seen, this writer can't be seen. So you pay the person, you write the book for me, the book will be published in my name. And I get the credit of having become an author. So most of the big politicians, celebrities, sports players, when they write their books, they are not really writers. Writing is a specialized skill that requires dedication. So they just hire someone. So you might get a book published, but you won't get the joy of writing, the immersion that comes in subject, the absorption, the deep appreciation of a subject that comes through writing. So if somebody is a ghost writer, there is no endeavor from their part. So there is no mode of the endeavor. Then there is no real fulfillment. But even as there is deep endeavor, one is deeply absorbed in something. What we are working for, how we are working, and what we are working for, both are important. Somebody may work very hard for their family, for their country, for some group that they are a part of. And yes, they get some meaning in their life because they have something to live for. But the Bhagavatam describes that even if somebody is working very hard, like Vyasadeva works very hard to put all these Vedic literature down in written form, and yet there is discontent. Why? Because the object is not high enough. And then Narad Muni will come and tell him that you need to glorify the Supreme Lord. You have written so much, but you have not adequately highlighted the Supreme Lord. It is only when you highlight the Supreme Lord, when you glorify the Supreme Lord, that will satisfy you. So essentially, if we consider this to be the ocean, Vyasadeva has manifested this ocean of Vedic literature. But now, what Vyasadeva is going to do is, Vyasadeva is going to enter into this ocean, and he is going to use a churning rod. And with that churning rod, he's going to churn the ocean of Vedic literature. And from that churning, just like in the Bhagavatam, there's a story of the churning of the milk ocean. From the churning of the milk ocean, nectar comes out. So similarly, from this churning, the nectar of the Bhagavatam will emerge. So, churning is a pastime described in the Bhagavatam, but churning is the process by which the Bhagavatam itself manifests. Now, churning is also, actually, I'll conclude with this point of the reference to churning comes explicitly at two places in the Bhagavatam, and implicitly it is another place. Explicitly it comes in the 8th canto, the churning of the ocean. Where does it come once again? Anybody remembers? Churning? All of you know it. That's what we discussed. That's the 8th canto, Samudra Manthan. Churning, where does it come? We celebrate that pastime every year in Damodar Leela. Yes. So, churning happens in Vrindavan. The Vrajavasis churn. In Vrindavan, Mother Yashoda and the gopis churn. And when they churn, what happens? Their churning of butter attracts Krishna to come. So it's fascinating. From this churning, nectar emerges. From this churning, you can also say butter emerges. But from the churning that the Brajavasis do, rather you can say it is the nectarine Krishna who comes, who is attracted towards the nectar. So one idea is that from this nectar comes, but the other is from that idea, the source of nectar is attracted. And similarly, there is Vyasadeva churns the Vedic literature to give us the Bhagavatam. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in his commentary says the commentators churn the Bhagavatam and they give their commentaries, they give their insights. And that makes the Bhagavatam also. They will churn one verse and that will make it more relishable. Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur gave a series of classes just on the first verse of the Srimad Bhagavatam. There's a commentator who has written a whole book on the first verse of the Srimad Bhagavatam. So the Bhagavatam verses can be churned. So for all of us, when we are studying the Bhagavatam, we are also churning the Bhagavatam. So our study is meant to be like churning. Now when we are churning, we have at our disposal two rods. One is the rod of reason, the other is the rod of devotion. This is all from Chakravarti Path's commentary. Now, from the rod of reason, we have a churning rod. So we use our reason. That means we use our intelligence. When we use our intelligence, by which the structure of the Bhagavatam, the concept of the Bhagavatam, what is being said here, why is it being said, that becomes clear for us. So from this, Krishna becomes manifest. That means we start seeing how everything is bent for, everything is ultimately glorifying Krishna. It's like from the churning of the milk ocean, nectar came out. But when we churn with devotion, so reason is about the logical understanding of the why of things. But devotion is a much deeper churning rod. It is not just for us to understand the why of things. It is to enter into the why of things. It is to experience Krishna. When devotion is there, it is not that Krishna becomes manifest from within the Bhagavatam. Actually, Krishna becomes attracted. So what is the difference between manifest? Manifest is like the 8th canto. From the ocean, nectar came out. But in the 10th canto, the Vrajavasis are doing the churning, and when the butter comes, Krishna comes to steal. So Krishna becomes attracted. It's similar to the 8th canto, it's similar to the 10th canto. So for all of us, with whatever capacity we have, we try to churn the Bhagavatam. And the more we churn, the more we will be able to realize and relish the supremely sweet presence of Krishna in the Bhagavatam, in our hearts, and in our lives at large. So I'll summarize. I started by discussing about the origin of the Bhagavatam. I discussed multiple frames of origin, where the Bhagavatam started and its purpose. So we discussed the contextual, then the conceptual, and each of them had a particular purpose. The contextual is to counter the age of Kali. The conceptual is to tell us the actual source of satisfaction. What is the essence that Vyasadev's dissatisfaction came from? The historical is to how to face death, at Parikshit Maharaj's curse. Then we discussed the mega purpose of the Bhagavatam. We discussed the destiny, free will. Sometimes when we hear about Kali Yuga, we might just become dark and pessimistic. But the idea is, the culture will go down, but the consciousness can go up. The rains are going to come, but we can have the umbrella. The Bhagavatam is providing us the umbrella. And we want to take shelter of the umbrella. And then how do we take shelter of the umbrella? We may have an umbrella, but unless we open and raise the umbrella, it's not going to shelter us. So, we open the umbrella by churning the Bhagavatam. And that's why we discussed churning at multiple levels. So the theme of churning runs throughout the Bhagavatam. So there is churning within the Bhagavatam, there is churning outside the Bhagavatam. That means the Bhagavatam itself is a result of churning. The commentators are doing the churning. And for us, we can churn through reason and we can churn with devotion. And each of these will help us move towards Krishna in various ways. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Are there any questions or comments? Yes, Prabhu. Does this prove that Krishna is higher than Vishnu? Well, because Vishnu Purana was already written. Not that simple, because for that matter, even the Bhagavatam was already written. Among the 18 Puranas, Bhagavatam is also there. So when he had composed the Vedic literature, he had composed the 18 Puranas and he also composed the Bhagavatam. So Vishnu Chakravarti explains that it was not that the Bhagavatam was a new creation. It was, what was new was the recreation, the refocus. See, most of the stories that are in the Bhagavatam, they are already there in the other Puranas. So, it is the focus of the story. The same story may be told from the perspective of Karma Kanda in some other literature. Say, for example, the Sudama story is told in some other Puranas where they say, Sudama had done this punya in the previous life. And because of that, Krishna came to meet him. Or Prahlad had something like, he was going through a forest and he was all alone. And I'm just not fibbing, but I'm just generalizing. The specific details of the story may be different. But the story is like this. So Prahlad was traveling through a forest and he was lost and he was hungry. And he came to a structure and just sat there and waited all day because it was raining and it was cold and he had no food. And that structure happened to be a deserted temple of Narasimha. And that day happened to be Narasimha Chaturdashi. And because he fasted on Narasimha Chaturdashi, that's why next lifetime he became Prahlad. Now, these are not the kind of stories the Bhagavatam focuses on. The Bhagavatam doesn't say the punya will lead to bhakti. The Bhagavad says bhakti is transcendent, ahaitukiya pratihata. So, the idea that now Krishna is the highest manifestation of divinity, it's more a matter of rasa. And we can explain that Jiva Goswami does that in Tata Sandarbha. I'm not sure whether from the Bhagavatam's context, we could infer that. Definitely, what we can infer is Vyasadeva chooses to glorify Krishna the most in his samam bonum, in his highest contribution. And therefore, we can say that Vyasadeva considers Krishna to be at least his dearmost revelation of divinity. The revelation of divinity that gives the highest satisfaction for him. Okay. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Yes, please. Yeah, ChatGPT cannot replace human, that soul is there. Yeah. See, the thing is that we in ISKCON are like fighting the wars of yesterday. It's like in the Second World War, somebody is fighting the First World War. The First World War is long over. It's like in the Second World War, somebody uses the weapons of the First World War. Second World War, there were airplanes. And because of airplanes, the war was not limited to the borders. See, before airplanes came in, war was mostly at the border. The border could shift if the enemy advances. But generally, people didn't have to have the opportunity to attack beyond the borders. So we are fighting the wars of an age that is long gone. In today's world, for most people, science and spirituality are not in conflict. No, there were broadly 3 ages. There's pre-modern times, there are modern times, and now what we have is post-modern times. So in pre-modern times, so we can say the age and the source of authority. What was considered credible? So, in the pre-modern times, it was scripture that was the source of authority. That means that whether it is India where the Vedas were followed, whether it is the Europe where the Bible was followed, Arabia where Quran was followed, but the scripture was considered source of authority. Then, as things change, in the modern times, science was the source of authority. If something is scientific, we'll accept it. Now, people are still very much attracted to technology. But the idea that science is the source of all good, that science will solve all problems, that people have lost to a large extent that uncritical faith in that. Now, mostly for people, it is their experience that is the source of authority. If something works for me, great. And that is why you will see there's a huge amount of openness to spirituality. I was in the Silicon Valley just a couple of months ago, and there, many of the top companies, they have some rooms for meditation, for mindfulness, for spirituality. They're not interested in religion, but they're very open to spirituality. So as long as you're non-sectarian, as long as you're not proselytizing, people have become hugely open. Why? Because their experience vindicates it. Whether science can prove or disprove a soul, it doesn't matter. No, if understanding the consciousness can help me feel better, can help me become better, then I'm ready to do it. And there's a lot of research also being done in the functional aspect of spirituality. So why am I talking about this? See, in the modern age, in the modern times, it's because science was the source of authority. So spirituality had to prove its validity by competing with science. Here science is wrong. Here spirituality is right. But in today's world, people don't care for that much. Now, whether something can work according to science or not, Whether science can prove something or not is not as important as whether it works for me or not. Now that may not necessarily be a good thing, because that can open people to all kinds of pseudoscience also. But the point is that we don't have to place spirituality in competition with science. Just because ChatGPT is there, most people don't think because of that there is no soul. It is we who think that because ChatGPT is there, now I have to prove the existence of soul to people. For most people, the two are not connected. We don't have to create problems that don't exist. That's why I started by saying we are fighting battles that are already over. So as soon as we go into that zone of what science can't do, we only raise the skeptical bar of people. That, okay, there's so much which the naysayers were saying science can't do, and science has done it. So the point is, or basically by science, I mean technology. So specifically what technology can't do. Can technology mimic human speech? Well, it's doing that. Can technology mimic human emotion? Well, it seems to be doing that. Now, we can go into that zone about what technology can't do. That is, technology cannot experience emotion. That, now you can always say, how do you know what is there to be experienced? Who is experiencing what? How do I know that, say, a robot made use operating ChatGPT is not experiencing emotion? In movies like Terminator seems to be experiencing all emotion. Terminator is just a machine. So for many people, sci-fi and science gets quite consumed. But the idea is that for us, it is important to know that what ChatGPT signifies is that if we equate ourselves with our brain, then we are dispensable, we are replaceable. That there is, unless there is something to human beings that is beyond their brains. See, as long as technology